Well, if any of you heads want some Panama Reds, all you gotta do is reach out your hand. I trade my stash for just a little bit of cash to buy a simple gold wedding band. Doing me making it natural.
Three, two, one, zero.
You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government system, political, economical system of a country. Starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs, Kremlinologists as they call themselves. No James Bond nonsense. The rest, 85%, is always subversion, manipulation of terms. We think that subverter is a person who is going to blow up our beautiful bridges. But according to the law and law enforcement systems of the Western civilization, it's not a crime. Subversion can be only successful when the agent of subversion has a responsive target. Subverter is a student who comes for exchange, a diplomat, an actor, an artist, a journalist like myself. It's most of this activity is overt, legitimate, and easily observable if you give yourself time and trouble to observe it, which means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. I am your faithful correspondent and humble servant, and this is normally the part of the program where I do a very glib, very humorous, some might say occasionally funny, news roundup segment. But as I explained to my esteemed co-host yesterday, I don't feel quite right about opening the show that way this week, since the last time we convened, two of the greatest living Americans have passed from our midst. Thomas K. Mattingly II, Chicago, Illinois, Rear Admiral, U.S. Navy, Astronaut Group 5, Command Module Pilot, Apollo 16, Commander STS-4, Commander STS-51C. Passed away on 31 October at the age of 87. His death was announced by NASA on 5 November. And Frank F. Borman II, Billings, Montana, Colonel, U.S. Air Force, Astronaut Group 2, Commander, Gemini 7, Commander, Apollo 8. Passed away on 5 November at the age of 95. Only 27 men have flown to the moon this month already. We have lost 2 of them, and that is a big deal. That so little note has been taken of their passing should make us all deeply ashamed of ourselves as a nation, frankly. The men of Apollo are the greatest heroes we have. And how many of them remain alive after this week? 8. From Apollo 8, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders. Apollo 9, Dave Scott. Apollo 10, Tom Stafford. Apollo 11, Buzz Aldrin. Apollo 12, nobody. Apollo 13, Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes. Apollo 14, nobody. Apollo 15, Dave Scott. Apollo 16, Charlie Duke. Apollo 17, Senator Jack Schmitt. Charlie Duke was the youngest man to walk on the moon. He is currently 88 years old, which is to say, we are perilously close to all being able to say we live in a world where no living man has traveled outside of low Earth orbit. And for that, we should be ashamed of ourselves, not just as a nation, but as a species. Now, Ken Mattingly dying is a big deal. To the average American, they only know him as the Gary Sinise character from the Apollo 13 movie who got pulled from the flight in favor of Kevin Bacon 2 days before launch because the aforementioned Charlie Duke had exposed him to the measles. That average American probably doesn't know that Mattingly did wind up flying to the moon later on Apollo 16 with Charlie Duke, or that he's one of only 3 men to have performed a deep space EVA, or that he commanded the 4th space shuttle flight and the 15th space shuttle flight. In his post-NASA career, compared with some of his other colleagues, Mattingly led sort of an unusually private life. He had a few different jobs with defense contractors here in the San Diego area, but never showed all that much interest in being a public figure. I've watched just about every Apollo documentary there is, and I don't think I've ever seen more than 2 or 3 Ken Mattingly interviews, which is too bad because he comes off as entertaining and humble and good-natured, which by all accounts he was. Mattingly's astronaut group, Group 5, was the first one where test pilot was not one of the qualifying criteria. They knew they were going to need a lot more astronauts, and they decided the test pilot requirement was causing the talent pool to be a little bit more restricted than it needed to be. So they changed the flight requirement from test pilot to just 1,000 hours of sick time on jets, and the pool of qualified applicants swelled exponentially, which was the desired effect. A lot of guys who never considered becoming astronauts because their flying skills were never going to be test pilot level, well, suddenly they had the opportunity to apply for NASA, and Mattingly was one of those. So he applies, and somewhat to his own surprise, he gets selected, but NASA goes on such a spree of astronaut hiring at that point that even if you perform wonderfully, it's going to be some years before you get a seat on an actual flight. For Mattingly, he gets selected in 65 and doesn't get a primary flight crew assignment until Apollo 13, 5 years later, and then he gets bumped from that flight at the 11th hour over the whole measles thing. So it's another 2 full years and 7 years in total since being selected as an astronaut before the dude actually gets to fly as the CMP on Apollo 16 with John Young and Charlie Duke. It all worked out pretty well for Mattingly, though. Instead of nearly dying on an aborted mission and barely making it back alive, he got to go on a lunar flight that came off with probably fewer hitches than any of the other ones did. And you know what? Sometimes things in movies are true. When Mattingly got bumped from Apollo 13 48 hours before the launch, that was as great a professional devastation as a man can suffer. A man could be forgiven in that situation for brooding and engaging in a bit of self-pity. How did Mattingly react? He said, I got 48 hours to make sure Jack Sweigert's ready to fly this mission in my place. And that's what he did. So while the movie does overstate to some extent the role that Mattingly played on the ground in saving the day, it doesn't give him enough credit probably for how gracefully he handled the situation between his grounding and the launch. And let's call things what they are. If Jack Swigert had made any mistakes during that emergency, there is no successful recovery of Apollo 13. But he didn't make any mistakes. Why? Because Ken Mattingly had superhuman reserves of class and magnanimity. And as big a deal as Ken Mattingly dying is, Frank Borman dying is a really big deal. Frank Borman, in the judgment of this reporter, could have made a compelling case for the title of greatest living American. I think at a minimum, Frank Borman warrants flags being flown at half-staff, and I wouldn't be opposed to a lying in state in the Capitol Rotunda either. After all, if George Floyd warrants that sort of treatment, I would like to think Frank Borman does also. For no country has ever had a more capable, more faithful, more devoted servant than our country had in this man. Who was the first man to be the commander on his rookie flight? This guy. Who was one of the authors of history's first manned orbital rendezvous? This guy. Who was the commander of the first flight to the moon that they had to throw together in 4 months and came off without a hitch? This guy. Who was sitting in the Oval Office with President Nixon, helping him write his speech on the night Neil and Buzz walked on the moon? This guy. When Apollo 1 caught fire on the pad and Grissom, White, and Chaffee got burned alive, who did they appoint to lead the investigation? This guy. Oh, and if you want to feel really inadequate and unaccomplished, consider that Frank Borman did all that before his 41st birthday. In addition to being a fighter pilot, flight instructor, test pilot, and getting a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. A NASA psychiatrist once famously said that Frank Borman was the least complicated man he had ever met. In his office at NASA, and later when he was president of Eastern Airlines, he had a Tolstoy quote on his wall, and I suppose there's some irony in that. A devoted American Cold Warrior who takes his guiding principle from the works of a Russian author, and the quote is this: "The only legitimate happiness is honest hard work and the surmounting of obstacles." And as animated principles, a difficult one to argue with if it were more abided and applied with the single zeal that Frank Borman applied, suspect the people of nations might prosper. There was no artifice with this guy. He did live according to that Tolstoy quote. He really did want nothing else but to help his team win because he's an American patriot. He went to West Point, became a fighter pilot because he wanted to help beat the Russians. He applied to become an astronaut because he wanted to help beat the Russians. And the astronaut corps provided an avenue for doing that didn't involve killing a bunch of people. So that was a nice side benefit. But then there was a lot of guilt that came later for Borman and others of the astronauts. And this was something that Gene Cernan spoke very powerfully about toward the end of his own life. Because in 68, 69, 70, when these guys were all flying to the moon and becoming the most famous celebrities in the world, the guys that they went to the academy with and to flight school with, they were flying combat missions over Vietnam, getting shot down, some of them killed, some captured. And Borman and Cernan, among others, they struggled to reconcile themselves with that. And the rejoinder, obviously, is, and they were told this by a lot of their fighter pilot friends, was to say, no, hell no. The amount of morale the country was getting from you guys flying to the moon and beating the damn Ruskies, that far outweighed anything you could have been doing if you were flying an F-4 over Da Nang. But even still, did they ever get over those feelings entirely? Of course they didn't, because how could you? Anybody with a functioning conscience would feel that way. And Frank Borman's death also, quite sadly, spells the end of one of America's great comedy teams. And that's the duo of Lovell and Borman. Listening to those two rip on each other, for me, it never got old. I would have been happy to see it continue forever. They flew with each other twice. And in fact, Borman never flew except with Lovell. And they had a total of about 3 weeks of space flight time together between Gemini 7 and Apollo 8. So there was never any shortage of material for the comedy act. Much of it involved floating globules of vomit and diarrhea, which I'm sure Frank never got tired of hearing about. And they ripped on each other in a way that men only do when they have very deep bonds of affection with each other. So let's all spare a thought for Jim Lovell tonight too, I think, because it must be a hell of a thing losing a guy who's been your best buddy for 50 years. But in the final analysis, this country of ours has a short and dwindling supply of real bona fide, honest-to-God role models. The type of people you can point to and say to every little boy and every little girl, be like that person, emulate that person as much as possible, and you will lead a fulfilling, consequential life. In every interview he ever gave, Frank Borman said he never had any animating principle, except I want to use whatever talents I have to serve my country as well as I can. So, and how many kids do you think think that way here in the present day? I think many of us would probably prefer not to know the answer. And I guess there's not much left to say for the purposes of this segment, except Godspeed, Admiral Mattingly. Godspeed, Colonel Borman. A great nation salutes their service. We shall never see their like again. And with that, I send it over to your co-host and mine, the one and only Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Blast Radius, where, after much back and forth throughout the past couple of days about exactly what we were going to do with this time, I came up with a couple of ideas. He came up with a couple of ideas, and we did what he wanted to do. So that's what we're doing. I'm sorry, was I not
in my
supposed to
own
tell
defense?
the truth?
I don't think you ever actually mentioned what you wanted to do.
Yeah, no, it never got that far. When I was going to suggest, I got a suggestion and I shrug at things like that. I'm like, okay, where are we at? We're doing the thing with the stuff, right?
Yep, we're doing the thing with the stuff. All right.
So
We're talking Apollo, baby.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to approach this from the perspective who thinks that the moon landing was one of the best Kubrick films ever made.
No, you're not.
I'm going to sit here and try to do this with a straight face. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sasquatch Story Times. Where
The
Captain
shadows don't look right. Why do the shadows not? Sorry.
where Captain Curmudgeon will now regale us with the
There's no fucking stars. It's all a fake.
regale
Sorry,
you
I'll be good.
with the myths and legends of the Apollo team who went to the moon. Right.
Right.
So you're telling me that we've got these big rockets over here that they're putting together. This is what, Saturn II, Saturn V? Which one is this? Apollo.
Saturn V for your lunar flights.
Right. Okay. So we're dealing with a Saturn V rocket over here. This thing's what, like 9 stories tall? 15? It's huge.
You're gonna have to give me a second to pull the stats up. I didn't know you were gonna put me on the spot like that.
But no. I'm just going for ballpark here. It's perfectly acceptable to be, not there. What's up, Skeet Pig? What is a Skeet Pig? Welcome on board, bud. Good to see you.
Oh, that's my dad.
Cool. But what I'm getting at here is if these people actually walked on the moon, right? Why didn't they bring back some green cheese?
Or capture one of the natives.
Or get one of them cows that I keep hearing about jumping over it. Answer that, smart man. Actually, no, I'm not going to.
Height 363 feet, diameter 33 feet, mass 6,221,000 pounds.
And to this day, we could not build it. If you woke up tomorrow and decided we were going to build a Saturn V rocket, we'd have to break out nerds with slide rules again.
And that's one of the most, well, it might be actually the most shameful failure in the history of our spaceflight program, is that the Saturn family of rockets was just abandoned and never continued, and they decided to switch to the stupid god awful space shuttle. I know, I'm prejudiced against the fucking space shuttle. Shoot me.
From a fiscal perspective, the space shuttle makes an enormous amount more sense. However,
well, if it had flown the way it was penciled out and promised to have flown, which it never did.
True.
They were supposed to get 25 flights a year, and they got something closer to 5.
And in some cases, only 1 every couple of years.
Yeah, and then you had a couple of catastrophic loss of crew and vehicle events that caused 2-year suspensions of the program, and that doesn't help your launch rate either.
Not at all, and it doesn't really help the whole series along when NASA decides to do more with less by sending up probes, and so but
here's let me tell you where the real tragedy is in that decision, because there was actually a version of the space shuttle. There was a concept of it where the shuttle orbiter was going to just sit on top of a Saturn V first stage. They were going to use the equipment they already had that was already proven to work to do the next thing they wanted to do. But the senators, well, they each had contractors in their state that wanted to get paid. So we can't do that if we're just going to make the same shit we're already making. We need new shit to make that can only be made in different places, preferably a place in my state. So that's where you get your Morton Thiokol rocket boosters that were only invented for that purpose. And if you want to talk about the root cause of why those Challenger astronauts died, there it is. It's all legislative. They chose a bad mission architecture because senators wanted to get reelected.
Basically. I don't disagree with that at all. In fact, that's a fairly succinct approach to our most recent approach to space travel. We're not doing space travel. The only people on Earth I know of that are attempting to put any type of space travel for people on the board is people like Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's all in the private sector.
I mean, he's essentially recreating in the private sector the Saturn V program.
Yeah, with his it's probably a fairly decent analog with his with his big stainless steel rocket of death.
His big penis. Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it is. That's why rockets are long and straight.
I love that he used stainless steel. I just think it looks cool.
Well, I mean,
In addition to being just, a practical material and a good cost savings.
also an absolute flex. That shit ain't cheap. Compared to titanium, it is. But
Yeah,
it's
compared
still...
to titanium, it is, exactly. And if the whole point of the exercise, like they've been telling us for years and decades, is that we want to drastically reduce the per pound cost of lifting things into orbit, then you have to go in directions like that, because you're not making very damn much progress otherwise.
Right.
And he's done that. I mean, he has really put his performance where his mouth is in the area of reducing per pound cost per launch, because he can do it just orders of magnitude cheaper than the government can do it at this point. And so it's good that he's... I wish he would spend less time trying to be a social media mogul and more on the space stuff.
Oh, well, we got to have our facial recognition software determining what news we can actually see and handle. And we have to have our... Here's the problem I always had with Orwell. I never believed it. Seemed like way too much manpower to be running a nation that way. You would literally have to have every single person watching every other person. Your neighbors would be your big brother. They would be watching you and checking on you and double checking on you.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, they outsourced it to AI, hooked it up with algorithms, and gave it the list of terms that are no bueno. Turned it loose on us and just went, maybe it'll work.
Oh, yeah. AI is the most effective kind of NKVD you could ever have, isn't it?
But that is your big brother. That is Big Brother. That is the thing that was written about, that was written wrongly. He thought it would literally be a case where every single person would be watching every other person. You would have a vast government network of conspirators that would report back to their handlers what their specific target's doing. And if they don't, then they'll get a report back from the person watching you. But instead, we just put them in our pockets and walked out the door.
Yep. Wow. Espionage used to be so much more artistic in the pre-digital age.
Right. You used to actually have to have skills.
And... Oh, yeah. You used to have some serious fucking skill. And I mean, filmmaking isn't any different, right? I mean, everything that's done today by armies of kids at computers in cubicles used to be done by people who actually had trade skills.
Bro, we have swarm bots built by Lego. So, like...
I just love that the word swarm bot is actually a thing.
It's a real thing, yeah. And actually, currently, all you need to be a spy, as far as I can tell, is a vagina. That seems to be the best way.
Well, if you want to get right down to it, a vagina is just about the best espionage tool in history.
Ever.
I think the stats will back me up on that.
I don't think you're going to find a single person in the room that will disagree, because I mean, it no joke, it even has the magnifying glass beat.
Oh yeah. Microglass. I mean, magnifying glass, microfilm, hidden dart gun. I don't care.
None of that stuff. Even the little umbrella with the Bryson tablet in it. That ain't nothing.
Yeah.
I think we've covered that one well enough. Now, the technology involved in the Saturn V rocket was some of the most advanced rocketry that has ever been created, and might not ever be duplicated, because they were utilizing very different fuels from what we use today. In fact, the early solid rocket boosters utilized a virtually identical compound from the dope that was used to make the Hindenburg waterproof.
And they still are insisting on using those god awful SRBs on the Artemis vehicle.
Well, they got them. They got a whole boatload of them, man. That's what it is. They've got so many of them. They're just like, well, we got to use them, and they're reusable, so they'll have them for a while. And
I try not to lament that decision, but it's difficult not to wonder how much farther along and better off we might be today if we had stuck with the greatest launch vehicle in history that we already had, and
Right.
and adapted the space shuttle program to fit that. But that would have made too much sense. That would have saved too much money.
I don't know. How many of the sections of Saturn V were reusable?
Absolutely none. but we already had all of the production lines in place, and all of the everything that makes building an existing product easier than designing a brand new one from the ground up that's going to be inferior to the one you're replacing with it.
Yeah, with a lot, like there was no improvement ultimately. Well,
Yeah, that space shuttle stack, the way it wound up, it was just a ridiculous, ungainly thing, and they would have been so much better off just sticking it on the top of a Saturn first stage. I don't want to belabor the point, but it was such an incredibly stupid choice.
there is one catch to that. The deployment of satellites without the arm would have been a much more
This is true. This is true. You raise an excellent point. That is the one practical advantage that the space shuttle orbiter gives you, is the ability to launch satellites by hand and grapple them and perform maintenance on them on orbit and bring them back if necessary. All of which the shuttle did at various times.
Right. Which, I mean, I get that, and
but the orbiter still could have done that if the vehicle you were using to lift it into orbit was a Saturn V first stage instead of the two stupid, idiotic Roman candle SRBs.
Dude, I mean, I firmly believe those SRBs have their place. I just don't think the shuttle was where they should have been. I agree with your assessment. Saturn V.
I mean, yeah, if you can keep them absolutely sealed up tight between all the segments, because we know what happened with the Challenger, then yeah, they work fantastically. But there is absolutely no safety margin, and that's the worst thing. Once you light the damn thing, you cannot unlight it. It's going to burn until it runs out of fuel. And I just think we should be past such things in the third decade of the 21st century. Maybe that's just me.
That should have been my freaking intro when I came in to live. I should have been singing that trash instead of whatever the trash came out of my mouth.
I thought the trash that came out of your mouth was perfectly lovely.
What the hell did I say anyway? I can't even remember.
I don't remember. It's been 27 minutes. You want me to remember that?
I guess not. I have to go back and check. I don't know what the hell. Anyway,
it's true. It'll be on the internet if we want to go back and check it.
That's right. Y'all can all go look. What color was Sally Rod's eyes?
Oh God, are we doing Challenger jokes?
Oh no.
Oh no. You know how many Challenger jokes I still remember from 7th grade? All of them, I bet. Oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm nope. Not going to do it.
One blue left and one blue right. Oh my God.
Oh God. Okay, maybe just one.
Queen Bird. That's so
no. You know what I'm gonna do?
Too soon.
I'm not gonna say the joke. I'm gonna type the joke in the chat.
She's killing me over here. I'm dying, and that is great. That's greatness there. That is true trolling masterpieces of what is taking place here, ladies and gentlemen. What color were her eyes? One blue left and one blue right. That's horrible. That's great. I loved it. I don't understand. What did I miss?
Okay, here it comes.
I'm very confused. There's so much here, Em. Calm down. I can't keep up with all. All right, we're moving on. Sorry. What you got there? What was the last thing that went through Krista McCoffey's mind? Judy Resnick's foot. That's fucked up.
I claim no responsibility for that joke.
Y'all are horrible people. I'm surrounded by horrible people. I
It's
mean,
true.
all of y'all.
You should take care in who you choose for your friends.
Right? Oh my Lord. What does this say about me? They say birds of a feather like get stuck in the mud together or something. I'm not sure how that goes.
And since this is a pertinent thing, apparently I need to bring up. It wasn't Sally Ride on the Challenger. It was Judy Resnick. A lot of people get that wrong.
Oh, he called her out. He called you out. Gotcha. You know, what Big Bird's supposed to be on that boat?
Yes.
What would have happened if
Charlie
Big
Duke
Bird
exposed him to the Beatles and he got bumped? That fucker was running around measling everybody.
But here's my question. What happens to Sesame Street if Big Bird blows up on the Challenger?
That's do you get a new bird or do you go a completely different direction?
Like, what happens? Like, suddenly Sesame Street has no Big Bird because the nation, the entire nation. Look, I was watching the Challenger on the news on TV when in like freaking kindergarten or preschool or whatever it was, right? We were all gathered around.
I didn't get to watch it live, but finish what you're saying and then I'll get into it.
All 15, 20 of us in the kindergarten rooms gathered around. We're watching it on the TV. It's being nationally syndicated. Everybody's watching, and suddenly it goes poof, and the signal goes dead, and they send everybody outside for recess. And I remember Corey come over and asked me, he's like, well, how you reckon they're going to get those people back? I said, dude, there ain't no getting those people back. They're smithereens all over the hemisphere. They won't find enough of them to stick in a bucket. And I got wrote up for that. I was like 5, 6, 7.
You were wrong too.
Yeah, I was wrong then. It's true. It's true. I shouldn't have said no stuff like that. But
yeah, so I'm in 7th grade. I'm going to Lutheran school. Launch time is 11:30 on the East Coast, so 8:30 Pacific, which is and on that day of the week was one of the days we had Bible study class. So the teacher would leave the room and the pastor would come in and do the Bible study period. But everybody wanted to watch the Challenger launch because the Challenger launch was a really big thing. They were marketing this thing really heavily to American school children because of the teacher being on board. And she was gonna teach a couple of lessons live on television while they were on orbit, and it was a really big thing, and there was the White House was trying to get schools to arrange for the kids to watch it, and it was a really huge thing nationally. So of course, as you might expect, the kids at my school wanted to watch it too. But the pastor would have absolutely none of it. We are not missing Bible study class to watch some stinking space shuttle launch. So you kids can just give up on that dream right now. So we didn't find out about the thing until the teacher comes back in when Bible study class ends to resume the next period, and she just, I wish I could describe how matter-of-factly she said it. I'll never forget it. She goes, "Oh yeah, the space shuttle just exploded and everybody died." And that was all she said. And she wanted to just get on with the rest of the day and have no more mention made of it. I shit you not. One sentence, and then she didn't want to talk about it anymore. And what do you think we kids all wanted to talk about? Like, can you imagine being a kid and having 1,000 questions when you've just heard a sentence like that? Like the TV show that you wanted to watch and they didn't let you watch, everybody just died, and that's all the information you get. Oh, you can wait until after school, you'll be fine. But yeah, it was pandemonium in that classroom. I think we had something close to a mutiny on the Bounty. Yeah, we all revolted. We're like, no. We're not doing fucking English class right now when the goddamn space shuttle just exploded. You're gonna go down that fucking hallway. You're gonna get that fucking television. You're gonna roll that TV cart back in here. You're gonna turn the goddamn television on, and we're gonna watch the news. And they did.
They turned us out of the school pretty much. Like right after it happened, everything went dead quiet. All the teachers walked out, like they turned off the TVs and walked out of the room. I remember them putting in I ended up with the Wizard of Oz, right? They stuck in the Wizard of Oz. Everybody left the room for 10 or 15 minutes. They came back in, turned off the Wizard of Oz, and everybody went to recess. It was one of the very few times the entire school was at recess simultaneously. But it wasn't the entire school. It was only the classrooms that were playing, which was most of them. So there's like maybe 10 classes still going on in there because they have no idea we've just bugged out for the day. They're so mad that we would watch if they blow up too. Go outside, play with our friends. It's horrible.
So I'm not laughing. That still pisses me off though, because so many people my age get to have this crystal clear recollection of watching that event in real time with all the other kids in their school, and I got cheated out of that over Bible study.
Yep.
And it's just not the same watching it on videotape. I'm sorry.
You are correct.
It was the most underwhelming way to find out about it, and I'm not even kidding. Those were the exact words she said. Oh yeah, the space shuttle just exploded and everybody died.
Oh my
Time for English.
Break out your blue book readers.
Yeah.
Blue horse readers. I can't remember. What was it? It was Blue Horse Reader, wasn't it?
Let's work on our book reports.
Exactly.
Well, while the pieces of the astronauts are still falling to the earth.
All right. So Big Bird blows up. Half of the nation sits and watches Big Bird blow up. The next Sunday, Sesame Street happens. Do they hold a funeral for Big Bird? You reckon?
State funeral for Big Bird. I'm thinking Lion State Capitol Rotunda.
I'm not even joking, man. This is freaking Big Bird we're talking about. They're getting a Medal of Honor regardless.
This ain't no Cookie Monster. This ain't no Oscar the Grouch. We're talking fucking Big Bird here.
I mean, we might go higher for some Bert and Ernie, but only if it was both of them.
I can't even remember any of the other character names, frankly. Oh, look, it's breakfast on Apollo 16 launch day. Hi, Charlie Duke.
Homie looked like he might be a little dehydrated. They all kind of look a little dehydrated.
I think you'd look dehydrated too if you were about to go sit on top of that much high explosive.
Yeah, no, you might be right on that point. Right. So okay. So let's go big. Let's say all the stops are pulled out. The White House gets in on it. I mean, hell, Reagan was all about some of that publicity, right? So Big Bird literally gets laid in state as an actual hero of the United States.
And there's a bundle of yellow feathers on top of the casket.
Damn right there is. Confederate yellow feathers at that, because that's just right. We'll do some Confederate yellow flowers everywhere while we're at it. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we go on to the next episode, and everybody's sad because Big Bird blowed up.
Well, the next episode has to be a Big Bird tribute, doesn't it?
Exactly. Obviously, we're going to sit around and talk about all the great times we have with Big Bird while the actor for Big Bird, the puppeteer, is just kicked out. Like literally,
everybody wears a bright yellow armband.
Oh yeah. That's real good. I like that. They all wear bright yellow armband. They meet up together at the local park where they do the full reminiscing with the wavy lines and the whole nine, right?
Yep. I had an actual Big Bird in my backyard today. Interestingly enough.
I assume you're not talking about Mrs. Curmudgeon.
Oh, it was like a crane or some shit. This thing was gigantic. My dog almost jumped through the freaking window screen trying to get at it.
Right.
It's like the biggest bird I've ever seen in a backyard. That's for damn sure. The thing had like a 3-foot long neck.
Yeah, it sounds like a heron or a crane, something along those lines.
I asked Lady Curmudgeon if she wanted me to shoot it so she could cook it up for dinner, but she wasn't into that.
Oh, huh.
No frontier living for that one.
Okay, so that's the question. That's actually the question. How does the nation move on from instead of a school teacher blowing up in the Challenger, Big Bird blew up? What's the alternate history behind that? Here we are, 2023. We look back at history, and then what was it, 86? Yep. Big Bird got blowed up. Does he have like a national monument in Washington? I mean,
probably, and there would be a whole heck of a lot of Big Bird elementary schools and Big Bird parks and Big Bird state.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. You might be right. There would literally like
possibly a USS Big Bird.
Would we go to the creator though? Would that be a Jim Henson thing, or I don't know? Like, who created Big Bird?
I do not know the answer to that question off the top of my head, being not as much of a Sesame Street aficionado as my parents always thought Sesame Street was a bit too ghetto.
Well,
sorry,
mine thought it would make me put on airs, so I mean, I guess we're right. We're right here in the fucking zone, dude. We can totally damn do this. Pig farmer.
Well played, my good man.
Yeah, I know I'm that good. Oh, that just ruined it. Shit. Okay, so
are you turning my Apollo episode into a fucking Big Bird episode?
You're the one who brought it up. Maybe.
What would happen if Big Bird got sucked into the engine of a 777?
How did he get in the airport in the first place? I mean, there's no way anybody with a big ass.
He's not in the airport. Is Big Bird flight? Can he fly, or is he flightless?
He's flightless, obviously.
Well, let's say he gets sucked into the engine at ground level. Then he climbed in there when he was drunk. Because he was so upset about the Challenger blowing up.
I got one for you. Check this out. Back in the day when they were developing the cockpits for various fighter craft, there was this is under an early Reagan administration organization. They had this meeting of minds between the scientists of the West and the scientists of the East, and they got together and had them a big old humdrum meeting and compared a bunch of notes, and they all went back to their own countries and started developing new stuff. And one of the things that was developed for one of the later, I think, Tomcats was a brand new type of acrylic cockpit. And they developed a cockpit that was strong enough to withstand the forces that a bird would deploy against it when at like Mach 3 or whatever it was, right? And so they sent the building method back to the East, who eventually sent back an email. They're like, how do you stop the chicken? Like, they asked, how do you test them? And they told them, well, we fire chickens at them from an air cannon. A couple of weeks go by and they get another email back saying, how do you stop the chickens from going through the canopy? Thaw out the birds first. You fire a frozen chicken at something, it's gonna do some real damage, bro. I don't know if that story is true, but it is one I've heard before. Hello, I'm Zaxxon. Welcome in, John Denicola. Good to see you, bud. Truth be told,
I'll tell you a true story that I am hesitant to mention. What you want to know? What I have?
We're gonna do it. You need to do it right.
You want to know what I have sitting in front of me?
A dinosaur, a potato. Two horseshoes.
I have sitting in front of me an entire Reddit page of Challenger jokes. I didn't say I was going to say them all.
It was worth a shot, right?
Or any, for that matter.
Yeah,
put me on the spot like that.
Don't mean to be so bad.
Okay, maybe just one.
Hold on.
No, I'm not. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Go back to the 2-shot.
Okay.
Where did Krista McAuliffe spend her vacation?
Everywhere.
All over Florida.
That is so messed up.
I feel so deeply ashamed right now. I can't believe I did that.
Oh wow. Let the bad taste jokes begin. You know, that's a dues paying member right there. You might want to listen to your
You're
group
damn
there.
right that the dues pay. I have to do what the dues paying members want. The dues paying members run the show.
Yeah, why ain't y'all tapping the like button? Go over and talk to Captain Curmudgeon's stream over yonder and give him some love.
Don't be bashful about hitting up both streams.
I mean, you're not supposed to cross the streams, but still.
Once in a while, it's all right.
Apparently, when you're fighting a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it's fine. That was one of the greatest scenes ever. People, okay, go ahead.
I remember this one. Oh God.
Hold on.
What does NASA stand for?
Okay, go ahead.
Need another 7 astronauts. Oh, I remember that one, but I forgot it. Oh.
You okay, bud?
I feel so ashamed.
You'll make it. It'll be all right. Promise.
Oh.
Okay, so Big Bird would not be that huge of a change in our history, apparently, if Big Bird blowed up on Challenger. There's our man Ken Mattingly in the middle in that Hollywood Squares arrangement, below John Young, above Charlie Duke. I wish I could remember names like that. I just recognize their faces. I mean, I could see that dude's ID in a crowd, and I'd be like, he went to the moon. He did the thing. For what it's worth, John Young is my pick for greatest astronaut ever. You have a thing to do. Do I? Do you have a thing? Ooh. Thank you very much, Smoking Auditor. I appreciate that. Do you want me to do a special dance? Because I don't know any. No. Maybe. Apparently it's more jokes. $2 per Challenger joke? Is that how this works? Okay, fine then. Oh God, I'm not. Oh God. I'm sure you can work it out. All right. All right. Here it comes. Oh, fuck. Did Krista McAuliffe have dandruff? Yes, they found her head and shoulders washed up on shore. Oh, that's so bad. So go sit in the corner and think about what you've done with your life. We'll get back to you in a minute.
I am a terrible person.
We're gonna sit over here and talk real personal, like between us. See, personally, I don't believe in all that moon landing bullshit. I think maybe Kubrick really pulled one over the American people, and they brought Bigfoot back.
The shadows are all wrong. God damn it! There's no stars in the fucking pictures. Have you ever heard of the vanilla skies problem? Believe so. I might have told you about it before, but if you look at old photographs, for all the world, it looks like the background has been painted out, like whited out. Why? Yeah. Why? No one knows. More jokes, please. Dear God, you are a savage, an absolute savage. How dare you? I know, this is making me deeply uncomfortable. Right. Telling tasteless jokes for money. What's my life been reduced to? I'm standing on the YouTube telling terrible jokes. It's not necessarily a bad life. It's just not necessarily a profitable or future one. Oh my
Smoking
god! Oh god, this one's terrible. Oh. Oh god. All right.
None of them are going to be good, bro.
None
They're
of
not going to be good or pleasant.
what do play here it comes. What do Playtex tampon users and Krista McAuliffe have in common? They both should have stayed on the pad.
Oh, you go back to your corner, bro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not necessarily the express opinions of the show. These are just horrible jokes he found on Reddit. And I told him to stay away from Reddit, that it's a communist scumhole. He doesn't believe me. A more ruthless hive of scum and villainy.
I was just going to say that. God damn it. You just said the exact thing I was going to say. Fucker.
I think we might have watched the same movies, dude.
I think there's a distinct possibility of that.
Hello there. Right? Yeah, they're just products of our own pop culture upbringing. That's all there is to it.
Now here's a joke that only makes sense if you're living in 1986. This is one of the old school ones right here. Do you remember the name Donna Rice?
Yeah.
Gary Hart was supposed to be the guy who got the Democrat nomination in '84, but he got busted having an affair, and the chick's name was Donna Rice. So here comes the joke. What do Krista McAuliffe and Donna Rice have in common? They both went down on the Challenger.
Ooh. Ooh.
Oh.
You Monica Lewinsky that one right out of the park, bro.
That one's going to leave a mark.
Yeah, on the dress. There's something wrong with us. I'm not sure what it is, but it's probably not approved.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this turned into a comedy episode, frankly.
Hey, any episode I'm involved in is intended to be a comedy. I guarantee you. Even if I'm trying to be educational, I'm also going to be funny about it, because I just hate boring shit. It drives me crazy. That Trafalgar episode, I loved it. It was great. It's the best episode that ever happened. And that's all you'll ever hear me say.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. I think I shot off my best Nelson joke in the backstage, though, and not even on the actual show.
Oh God!
When you asked me what's your favorite Horatio Nelson quote, and I said, "Where the fuck did my arm go?"
How does a blonde turn on the light after having sex? Do you know? I know. She opens the car door.
Yep, that's it.
Are you gonna play hell trying to get a blonde joke by me I hadn't seen? I'm telling you, I didn't do all of them on my channel because they get a bit repetitive after a bit. But if you go looking for jokes, you'll find out there's only a couple of thousand jokes on Google. That's why when you go to the shorts and you see people telling jokes, they're all telling the same 3,000 jokes.
Yeah, funny.
People who make it big are the ones who can take that plain Jane joke and twist it into something new because of current events or mutual experiences. I know she opened the car door, bro, but hey, I'll put it up here anyway. We'll do it visually. Skoosh. How do you kill a blonde? Well, you can put a scratch and sniff sticker at the bottom of a pool. You could drive into a creek and not let down the tailgate. You can there's a few ways. You know.
It's true. If you're willing to get creative, there's probably more than a few.
I was messing with them the other day. I don't remember what spontaneously what made me do it. But I was sitting there talking, and just out of the blue, I looked over at her and was like, "Is it true that you got fired from the M&M factory for throwing away all the W's?" And she just and then I went right on along with the conversation like that had never happened. We just skipped right across it. But I'm evil, and I'm meant to be evil, I suppose. Not bad. I was just drawn this way by the creator. Okay, so
we can't help how the creator draws us.
those two links you got are not two. Are they? Or wait.
No, they were just wiki links.
Oh, okay. They're not too.
But yeah, I mean, we can talk about the movies without necessarily having to show relevant background footage, can't we? Or
yeah, I don't remember this specific movie. I'm not exactly abreast of it, right?
So the way I wound up going down this rabbit hole was I watched 12 Angry Men, which is, one of the greatest pictures ever, because I felt like watching it. And then when I got done watching that, one of the suggestions that Amazon Prime gave me was a brand new picture called The Kane Mutiny Court Martial. And I found that pretty intriguing, being a fan of the first Kane Mutiny picture, the one with the very famous one with Humphrey Bogart. So, and this brand new picture has Kiefer Sutherland in the Bogart role, Jason Clarke in the role that Jose Ferrer played in the older picture. And I watched this picture and I very much enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it because, and this is Squatch, something we've talked about from time to time. It is a great movie that is just people talking in a room. And you almost never get pictures of people talking in a room in the era of woke Hollywood, because the people who make movies think we just want to watch stuff blow up, and that's their problem. But some of the greatest movies that have ever been made are either entirely or mostly people talking in rooms. 12 Angry Men, I already mentioned. Inherit the Wind, people talking in rooms. Judgment at Nuremberg, which was also, I think, the number 2 top grossing picture at the box office in 1961. People talking in rooms in a trial of Nazi war criminals. I mean, that's what moviegoers used to be interested in things that were so much more intelligent than you would think they seem to be interested in today. But is that necessarily true? And maybe that's the best jumping off point for this discussion.
All right. So going back to 12 Angry Men, because it's something that I actually noticed when I was younger, and I never did truly rectify between the plot and the way it's put together and the way it plays out. It's laid out as a whodunit, like a classic type murder mystery type. There's something schnickerous going on here, and we got to get to the bottom of it. But it's not that. That's not what it should be at all. That's not the thing, right?
And they don't give us any expository information that would have been outside the scope of what these jurors would have been actually talking about in the room. They don't spoon feed it to the audience, and that's wonderful.
Right. And that's another thing is in modern movies, and I really don't care what type of show, movie, where you go, anytime exposition comes up, they forget the primary tenet of it's better to show than not tell. There are times in movie making when telling is better, but it's when the story you're telling about is not as good as the story you're showing. And the other way around sucks.
And I on that exact point, that was something that impressed me right off the bat with this new Kane Mutiny Court Martial movie, because what they've done is it's an adaptation of a play from 1951, which actually came before the movie. But the play and the movie, obviously the older movie, are set during World War II. But this new movie, it moves the setting of the events from World War II to the present day. And when the picture starts, the way that they signal to us that we are in the present day and not World War II, because people like me who didn't know anything about it and clicked on it were probably expecting a World War II movie. The way they signal it is they just show a close-up of a row of hats. and we can see that these are modern day Navy hats and not World War II hats. And without telling us, just by showing us, that's all you need to do to say, okay, we're in the present day, we're not in World War II, let's move on. You're done.
Right. Whereas most major movie houses in the past 10 years would have spent 5 minutes on a narration, had a voiceover by Morgan Freeman, had 27 lines of text rolling across the bottom telling you that you're in Paris, France, not Paris, Texas.
Yeah. Big giant letters on the screen, like a Marvel movie.
Exactly.
Budapest.
The one in Indiana, not the other one.
Yes.
It always blows my mind.
So it's actually pretty interesting because the Caine Mutiny, the story, it originates as a novel in 1951, and then there's a play that the author of the book writes, which is obviously the basis for this new movie. And then the Humphrey Bogart movie doesn't happen until 1955, 54 or 55, one or the other. But here you have a case, which I'm not aware of any other case like this, where you've got a book and a play and a film that are all written by the original author. And I think that's pretty awesome, because how often do you ever see that?
It certainly lays a certain amount of continuity to the work.
Yeah. And the only things they change in this latest version are the things that you have to change to move the story into the present day from World War II. And it works surprisingly well. There are actually, I found some aspects of the story that actually work better in the present day setting than they do in the World War II setting. And it's an interesting story also, and this didn't occur to me until I had watched the entire court-martial movie and then almost the entirety of the Bogart movie afterward, was that here you have a World War II Navy movie with a totally gripping story where there is not any combat or even any contact with the enemy. And how great that it took me so long to notice.
Right? I mean, when you go back and look at some of the older movies, you'll find there's like 2 or 3 layers to the plot. There might be more if you're well into the subtext of the dialogues, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not familiar with the mid-50s vernacular, you wouldn't necessarily understand what a conversation is deeply about.
Right. And there was also just less of a desire back then to like you said, browbeat the audience with expository information, because you think they are all idiots who can't infer things for themselves.
Right. The exposition in movies have gotten completely out of hand. If you have a good plot and you have good dialogue and you have good arrangements of scenes, then people should know all right. My best example of this is Train to Busan.
Not
you watch that one? Okay. If you get it, when you get off of this show, when we're done, I want you to go home, sit down with a thing of freaking popcorn and some Doritos and a Red Bull or whatever you got to do, and you watch the Train to Busan. I don't care if you get the dubbed version or not, but at some random point in this movie, I want you to mute it and continue watching it. Give it about 5 minutes. See whether or not you walk away with it muted. That movie tells the entire story visually. You need no dialogue to understand what's going on. It's nice, it's bonus, but it's unnecessary. The first time I watched that movie, it was in Korean or wherever it's from, right? And I sat through the whole thing not realizing that I had muted it because I couldn't understand the language. I just watched it. That is a truly excellent film.
Yes, absolutely.
Another good one, another good for this example, The Quest for Fire.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Ron Perlman.
I remember seeing that one in the theater when I was very small.
Wow. That's it's got a pretty good cast of characters too, but the entire dialogue involves language that no one on earth speaks.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I haven't thought about that picture for years. I want to watch that now.
Yeah, I think it's available on
what year was that picture? Like 81, something like that?
Maybe.
I'm gonna look that up.
Not sure, but it's a really good one, and it's funny as hell. The whole thing's funny as all get out because this is
that was a real head trip of a movie to watch when I was a little kid.
Yeah, no, it's the story of Prometheus. If you break it down, it's the guy who went.
I was right. 1981.
Oh, you go, girl.
Boom.
I hear you. You get the points on that one. Captain Curmudgeon's got 2 points on me, y'all.
I need to claw some points back from what I got docked for those Challenger jokes.
Good luck.
I'm like, what's the which Batman movie is it where he has to climb out of the bottomless pit of hell and despair?
That's all of them, isn't it? Which one? Oh, wait, no, I know the one you're talking about. That's such a bad.
No, yeah, it's the one with Bane, yeah, Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
Or
that
one of those fucking Dark Knight. I don't fucking remember.
That is part of the plan. Someone must be found. But I've got a doctorate, so you must listen to me.
I'm Bane. You understand me perfectly well.
Actually, the one that got me, I saw a skit, and somebody pulls up to the drive-through, and it sounds somebody drops a Bane line, and he orders and goes to the window, and it's Bane standing at the window. And he sounds exactly like he did coming through the beaker. Guess you had to be there. Read the room. Damn it, Sasquatch.
One more kind of funny thing about that pair of movies is that in the new movie, the Kiefer Sutherland Jason Clarke version, there is much more appropriateness in the casting as far as the age of the actors. In the Humphrey Bogart picture, you got a lot of 50-year-old lieutenants in that picture. It makes it kind of awkward at times. You've got Fred McMurray when he was like 3 years removed from being the dad on My Three Sons, playing the young communications lieutenant when he's like the age I am now. I mean, it's a bit much is all I'm saying.
A 55-year-old radio operator, private first class.
And even Bogart's character, I think he's like 55 years old at that point. He's only a few years from death. He's already a fairly sick man, and he's talking about how he was an ensign 7 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, nah. I mean, and there was a lot of people who gave Top Gun Maverick a hard time because Tom Cruise was playing a 60-year-old captain who's still on active flight status, and you know. Let's not pretend such things are new, is all I'm saying, because they've been going on for many decades.
Talking about good movies, you brought up Maverick. I'm going in. Bro.
Go in, buddy.
All right. So there's this character in Maverick that has intrigued me since I watched it, and he represents a analog to the character of Iceman. Right? Iceman was such an asshat through the whole movie, but he was really, really good at the same time. He was just as good as the main character, Tom Cruise, but he didn't have the cool to maintain it, right? He was over the top. He pushed it harder to the breaking point and passed, whereas Tom Cruise was able to take it right up to the edge and actually land the fucker, right? Okay. Right. In the new movie, here's the difference, and it took me a little while of figuring it out. The Iceman type character, and I can't remember what they call him, but it's right on the tip of my tongue, and I'm keep going, and I'm going to look it up. He is such an over the top asshat. He brags about everything. He's a total braggart, but there's a quality in the movie that answers the question of why you hate him and also why you can't hate him.
Hangman,
that's it. So Hangman's hanging out there, and he is sitting right behind the main character in the movie the whole time, constantly just ribbing on him, pushing on him, just doing all the things like in Karate Kid. Which one's the bad guy? Is it Johnny, or is it the guy who swings in the town and rooks Johnny's girl?
It's Daniel.
And Maverick.
I'm firmly on the side of Daniel is the villain in the Karate Kid. I'm all on board with that theory.
Oh, maybe we should.
I think Johnny got a raw fucking deal, personally.
Totally got a raw deal. I've been on Johnny's side since day one. I came out the theater with people fussing at me about that. Why do you like the villain? He's Johnny not a villain. Hanging out. Dude, he was making out with his girl when fucking homie showed up, sprayed water on everybody. We're getting off base. My point is, Hangman was revered and reviled for exactly the same reason Iceman was, but they did it with a different flavor so as not to step on Iceman's clout, so to speak, right? The different flavor is that man is not bragging. He is that good. He does everything he sees Tom Cruise successfully accomplished. If he sees someone successfully accomplish a given maneuver in that airplane, he goes right in behind them and does exactly the same thing because it's proven it's possible.
He has slightly less of a Chad complex than young Iceman, I would say.
Okay, yeah, but that's what I'm saying about That's what I'm saying about not stepping on Iceman's legacy. They did it so cleverly and so elegantly that while you see the obvious analog between the two, there is also the obvious differences.
Well, and the way that they involved Val Kilmer in the picture was very, very well handled. I thought, just magnificently handled.
As well as you can do given the circumstances.
Yeah, given the limitations and the constraints that his condition presents, you just couldn't have handled it any more tastefully or any better, and it was just wonderful, I thought.
And there are lots of little things, little digs in there. They do a lot of things to sprinkle member berries through the movie, but they don't do so much as to force feed it to you.
Not like I'm gonna slap you across the face with a 12-inch cock of memberberry,
right? I don't
which is what we usually get.
But if you ever have had a friend that passed away that has a son that looks just like him, and you come walking into a convenience store one afternoon and you see your dead friend walk out the door, and you go, you understand why they did the memberberry thing, because running into your best friend's son is a very, very emotional thing, and the only way to convey that emotion is through the memberberry technique, but it was very cleverly done.
Look, it's a thing you remember. Look, it's a thing you remember. Look, it's another thing you remember. Just
my wife hates me.
Stop worrying about how shitty this picture is, because there's a thing you remember. Let your nostalgia bone take over. Just ride that thing into the sunset. Don't worry about the plot holes in this particular movie. Just look at that drink that sweet, sweet memberberry juice.
My wife hates me for movies, especially sequels or anything related to that, right? First of all, within the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, typically someone receives a head injury, or they drink some unfiltered water, or they go into a confined space of some sort, and then everything goes wild in the movie. As soon as we're like watching through it, I've got my little snacks together. I'm sitting there, and somebody walks, all of a sudden the main character gets hit in the head, and I'm like, there it is. It's all hallucination. They're laying in a coma in the hospital through this whole process. I guarantee you at the end of this movie, they're going to wake up in the hospital. Mark my words. None of this is happening. It's not real. And like 90% of your horror films can be dissected through this method, right? So,
just like the axiom that says teenage characters who sneak off to have sex will be horribly butchered to death within 10 minutes.
Exactly right. It's not written in the horror school manual. However, it is implied through every horror ever made. Take a look at some classic horrors, and you'll find folks drinking out of creeks, folks drinking out of puddles, folks swimming in unfiltered water, that kind of stuff. And this is stuff.
That whole paradigm, that whole concept, that kind of almost goes back to the era of the Hays Code, where you were only allowed to show depictions of things like sexual immorality, if the people engaging in the immoral act face consequences for their actions, like getting hacked to death by a serial killer, for instance.
But it even followed into some of the early 80s horrors. Like you have, actually it may go a little later than that, like Evil Dead. If you're thinking
much later.
In the earlier versions of Evil Dead, one of the very first things they do when they find the cabin is open the cellar and go down into it. All of them go down into this unexplored, sealed up cellar that nobody has seen in 30 freaking years. How you reckon the air is in there?
Let's all go together into the small, dangerous place.
Right? So they go down, get them a huff full of radon, come back up, and they're fruiting up for the next 48 hours. Yeah, there were demons. I cut off my hand. Now I have a chainsaw. Shop smart, shop S-Mart.
Yep, there it is. Oh, also another 80s horror movie convention. The first girl to show her tits always gets killed in the first act.
Yeah, no, the best setup. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And
like that is a commandment practically.
Okay, so first of all, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was loosely based off of a real story.
This is true.
Second of all, the people who made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the time had only dabbled in doing movies before that and went whole hog on one. They were like, nah, we can do this. And they did. So
we got this, guys.
You expect breakthrough material from unexpected places. You don't get breakthrough filmmaking from Juilliard. You don't get breakthrough filmmaking from Skag. None of that happened.
Absolutely right. The worst thing that ever happened to cinema was when they made an academic discipline out of it.
Right. It's not an academic discipline. Any idiot out there can write a script. Hell, at this point, any idiot can prompt an AI to write a script, and it'll be better than the one you write yourself. However,
and that is not an overstatement, not an exaggeration. That is a literally true statement of fact right there.
It will not have that distinct spark of soul that makes a script worth doing.
No. Because the things we get nowadays, they are not, for the most part, stories that originate in people's minds to the same extent that they used to. The way stories get originated now is, well, how can we spread the message? How can we craft a story that best spreads the gospel of diversity and representation and girl power? Because those are the cornerstones that you're starting out with when you begin your script now. Diversity, representation, and girl power. And any story that you start to craft has to fit within those parameters. And you get creative death that way, as we already know.
Well, if you limit the creative spark that exists in the breast of every single human out there, whether you're a farmer or you're a dam builder or a homesteader, when you get to whatever profession you apply yourself to, you will apply your art to it. You can't help it.
Right.
It might not be what others would consider art, but you would recognize it as such because it's your personal flourish to it.
And if you're in a business like novelist or screenwriter or television writer or what have you, and you are constraining yourself in the kind of content that you're allowing yourself to write, because, well, I can only write things that fit within certain political and demographic parameters, because that's where my industry is right now. So maybe somebody thinks of a great story that might be fantastic, but it has some elements that might be problematic. So I could never get this story turned into a picture, so I won't even start writing it. And there you have the absolute death of art and creativity.
I think the person that would write that story would write it anyway, but they would never release it to anybody who would ever matter. They'd show it to cousins, uncles, and stuff like that, but they wouldn't be showing it to Hollywood execs because it won't sell.
Yeah. Because if I want to sell scripts and make a living, I have to. There's only certain kinds of things that I'm allowed to write. So I can't be as maximally creative as I might otherwise like to be, because got to pay the bills, got to eat, got to pay the rent. And I expect that a hell of a lot of people in that industry are stuck in that sort of conundrum right now.
Agreed. And once you take out a double handful of variables that could be plot related, you're left with something that looks like every other thing that's been made.
And you're just doing a cookie cutter assembly line process.
Well, at this point, Disney's done exactly that. I mean, you can take the last 5 Marvel movies, the last 3 Star Wars movies, the last 2 Star Wars series that have come out, every Marvel series that could come out, and apply the general Disney formula to it.
Oh, I know. It's
so
just
horrible.
god awful. And the theories that are out there that anybody will be familiar with who watches Doomcock's channel is that ever since post Endgame, when Kevin Feige stopped being just the executive producer and started wanting to be the actual producer, name before the credits, a Kevin Feige production. That's where we are now. That he changed the whole in-house creative process, where they basically are letting the internet write the scripts now. It's like every Marvel production is to all intents and purposes a choose your own adventure novel, where they are told to go in and just shoot a whole bunch of shit, shoot enough stuff where we can do the story half a dozen, 6, 8, 10 different ways, and then we will selectively leak stuff out to the internet. And if the internet likes this thing, then we'll use more of those things. If the internet likes this thing that we leak, then, and that's the way that these things are getting put together now, and the results are just about as disastrous as you would expect, because you can't make a good thing if you're just inventing it as it goes on, according to public opinion. That's not the way good art gets made. You have to decide what you're going to make and make it. And at the end, if it sucks, then it sucks. But you can't chase public opinion through the creative process. That's just not how these things work.
PK Audits brings up a good point. Saw being a cookie cutter series, I don't disagree. Hostel is too, but both of them did something unique, which was create their own cookie cutter, right? They didn't take the story of something that had previously happened and make it into a sort of different thing that could never have happened. Instead, they took a brand new, completely enclosed universe and applied it to a completely uncontrolled narrative, where the control is all within this unknown madman's head. That was unique. Blair Witch, another one. Very loose on plot details, virtually no manageable dialogue to speak of, almost completely constructed in post.
Yep,
However,
but they had a great unique gimmick that hadn't been done before.
Right. They were able to pull the found footage genre directly into the mainstream consciousness, which
it was also a real triumphant early use of digital era sort of guerrilla marketing.
Right. And it was a beautifully put together campaign that functioned almost entirely below the radar until the
it was the promotion for that movie was years ahead of its time. It was absolutely brilliant.
In fact, you don't see anything like that again, like on the level that the intro to the Blair Witch Project had, until you get to the what was the monster pictures, the Cloverfield. Cloverfield did a whole bunch pre-marketing that just was never reflected in its spending and stuff, because they didn't really spend much on it. They used the people in the crew and in-house to be like, what kind of viral shit have y'all seen? stuff like this. Okay, let's adapt it and do it with Cloverfield. And that was sort of there's an altered, what is it called? An augmented reality game that is associated with Cloverfield, where you can go through all the different movies and series and everything associated with it. There's a few web comics and stuff, and you can link together the universes in such a fashion as to define 3 or 4 different paradigms. Anyway, it's a very deep thing that was set up long before the actual movie aired. This is what's missing. This is part of it.
Yeah, but with a little creativity, I think creativity along such lines as you described, you can do, it seems to me, much more effective marketing for much less expenditure, because where we are right now is that, I mean, it's a completely absurd place that the industry is in, because not only does every single movie cost $200 to $300 million, but the promotional costs are double that. I mean, we've got movie after movie after movie now that pretty much like the Indiana Jones picture. That thing had to make $1 billion to break even, and that's madness. That is stark raving madness.
It is, and something that's also not taken into account on U.S. But box office takings are the international trailers and whatnot, because they do a slightly different version for virtually every single country, and that skyrockets the global box office that needs to be taken. I mean, it's absurd. You cannot possibly make an original picture budgeted and backed by a major studio, because if it's original, they will not take the risk. They'll barely take the risk on an entire series franchise of young adult novels that have a damn good chance of making their money back in the long run. No, they just make another development.
And you want to talk about where we are in terms of the absurdity of it all. How can it be that some of the most expensive films ever produced in world history come out with shitty CGI? How can a $300 million movie have any shitty CGI shot in it? I mean, seriously.
I hate it when they, these are certain things that have been solidified since The Thing, right? Perspective shots.
Yeah.
Why is it that I'm watching a modern 2023 rendition of CGI that looks like it was filmed inside a shoebox?
And some of the effects, even going back to the 50s and 60s, were so much more effective than anything they're doing today. I think specifically of a lot of those Navy movies and submarine movies where it's perfectly fine. The worst thing you get is maybe a little bit of dodgy looking rear projection, but all the stuff they did with miniatures, it's fine. It wouldn't add anything to the narrative if you did it with CGI. It's totally fine. Everything else they do is fine. And it was real people working with real objects, doing real things. It wasn't a bunch of kids in a cubicle farm at computers where you have to have 12 digital effects houses at the end of your movie credits. It's like every single person in the United States is a fucking computer animator, it seems like. The credits on these movies take like 20 freaking minutes to go by. Digital effects by these people and these people and these people and these people and these people. Back in the day, the closing credits used to take 45 seconds. Today, they take 20 minutes.
It'd be 3 pages. And that would be if they included all the movie houses and the executives.
I know. It's gone to a place of complete madness, and it has made movies exponentially more expensive. What it hasn't done is made them better.
At all. Occasionally, and this is something I want to get off my chest. I said a lot of really bad things about the new the Game of Thrones spinoff, House of the Dragon. I expected no good from this film. It was really,
me too. But I wasn't expecting much out of it and totally dug it. Looking forward to the next season.
So pleasantly surprised. I got to
Oh, yeah.
watch the entire thing. Me and my wife sat there just like we did Game of Thrones when we were watching it when it came out, except we were able to watch the whole thing in 2 days instead of, we binge watched it, dude. We watched the whole thing. Turn around and tried to watch the Ring of Power. I think I made it to like the 4th episode and started like drinking heavily. And my wife
I made it through, I think, 17 minutes of Rings of Power.
Well, see, those first 17 are so cringeworthy. Why does a stone not float, but a boat does? Because the stone can't see the sky. Wait, what?
I just saw absolutely no possibility that this was a show I wanted to invest my time in. Just
you have a choice right now. You have to make a choice.
I'm out. Not doing it. Just
you have to make a choice.
I don't care that much.
You got to make a choice right now. Right now, I need the answer to this. Do you want to do the talk out, or do you want Reagan to do the talk out?
Let's let Reagan do the talk out.
Reagan's going to do the talk out, folks, but we're going to do that in 30 seconds. Tell me a joke.
Oh, Christ, I think I closed the damn
Oh, man,
page.
come on. So a blind guy and his dog walk into a bar, right? Walks up to the bartender. He says, hey, man, I'd like to get 2 drinks. Bartender says, you can't have that dog in here. Dog says, why not? Bartender gives him 2 drinks. It's not a good joke.
I'm laughing on the inside.
I could tell. It's got everybody.
What was the last thing Krista McAuliffe said right before Challenger exploded?
Shit.
What's this button do? There you go. There's your joke. You happy now?
Oops.